want to acknowledge that, you know, I've been tossing around trying to determine the name of the film I'm working on, and I want to give you credit for coining the term, which is, I think, is a great compliment to you, and that's Don Quixote today.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
I have worked enough at this time, and I think it's time you work, or continue to work, whatever, and invite your first guest on. And I find him to be a very, very interesting man, and I think him now as a dear friend. So I'm going to leave. Goodbye.
Terrific. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Well, it's my pleasure to invite this gentleman, Dr. Randy Weingarten. Hey, Randy, how are you?
It's a great pleasure to be here with you, Jonathan.
Thanks so much. Please.
To help inaugurate the second stage of your maiden voyage.
Well, thank you. I feel like a cruise line. Thank you thank you so much. You are a preeminent psychiatrist. You've practiced in Palo Alto for many, many years. You're an adjunct professor of psychiatry at the Stanford Clinic.
No, my own practice, but I do teach in the Stanford clinics, right?
Correct. And again, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm really excited about what we're going to be talking about. Out of all things, Bob Dylan, which is very interesting.
Well, I feel, hearing your biography that Michael so eloquently described and talked with you about, that I think in many ways the viewers would be more interested in what you have to say about the various musical personalities you've met over your life. But
I think anytime we can get a perspective, especially from inside the mind, I think that would be, that's terribly interesting. Tell me about your take on Bob Dylan a little bit.
Well, frankly, I never knew Bob Dylan, the actual person, but he was part of the cultural landscape of my growing up in the 60s. And his music was very important to me, as it has been for so many other people. The way in which he somehow brought about the convergence of folk music, the blues, his own particular creation of a kind of melodic music that also had an activist theme to it within society, and it spoke to us. We lived his music, and the intriguing thing is how it's kept reverberating over the years. Mm-hmm. And I think also the fact that many of his musical creations are so poetic. And my interests have been not only in medicine and psychiatry, but in the humanities, especially poetry. And a lot of people try to ask Dylan whether he was a poet or a singer, and he would say, and he would never ascribe himself to one or the other, but he said, "I'm a song and dance man."
Right.
And you probably know that.
Yes, I do. So if I said to you, "Stuck in Mobile with the Memphis Blues again," what does that mean to you?
Well, you know, when I first heard that lyric, you know, and the larger part of it is, "Oh mama, is this really the end?" And the last part of it is, am I stuck, here I am in Mobile, stuck in the Memphis Blues again. Mm-hmm. So the word "again," to me, brought to mind the sense of some kind of recurring experience. And I don't know what his intention was in writing that lyric and singing it. And maybe that's not important, but I experienced it as that someone was coming to a point in their life where they felt stuck in some way. And that it was like a writing block of some sort, or a composing block. And that it was something that was recurring. and that their cry, "Oh, Mama, can this really be the end?" was a kind of plea or an appeal to the universe to help get through this. Another way of looking at it was a kind of a foreboding of the end of a particular phase of life, or a particular activity in life, or life itself. You know, so that in a way it has a very kind of existential quality to it. And so that, but in addition, I mean, Mobile, Alabama, I've never been to Mobile. I don't know if you have either.
I have not.
But I understand it's a place where folk in the blues was particularly alive. And but to be stuck in Mobile means that some part of him was living that experience, and yet when he goes to Memphis, it feels like there's something that's come to an end there. And I don't know what that is, because he kept, as far as I understand, reading the chronicles and Greil Marcus about Dylan, he was constantly reinventing himself, and still is. I mean, that's the remarkable thing.
But this had a profound effect on you because, as you had mentioned before, your interest in poetry, this sort of lifted you up to write something, didn't it?
Yeah, I've been working on something called Experiments in Carmel Valley, which is a collection of poems. And they're really experiments in writing poetry and in exploring different voices. And I've always thought, what would it be like to sing in a gravelly voice like Bob Dylan? And by coincidence, you know, these sort of meaningful coincidences, I came across this lyric.
Interesting.
And that became the basis for a poem.
Is there any Dylan lyric that you find within your own self more profound, that really touches you? Is this particular lyric the most profound one that you work with, or are there others?
That's a wonderful question. The one that I find, when I think about the end of my life, and if there ever were a memorial service, I would want music to be played. And the song I would like played is Mr. Tambourine Man. I think that lyric is an extraordinary song about the passing of life and the passing on of tradition through life to others. And there's another one, another Dylan song that is extremely powerful and meaningful, which is The Girl from the North Country, which is covered by many different musicians, including Roseanne Cash, who changed the gender of that song, which is fascinating.
Yes, indeed.
To me.
Indeed. You know, I would love if you could share with us some of your poetry. I'd love to hear and share that. Would you mind?
Well, I just happened to bring it.
Would you mind?
No,
That
I'd
would
love
be terrific.
to do that.
That would be terrific.
I'll read you the Dylan poem that I wrote.
And this was based in part, or an inspiration of this was from the Stuck in Mobile.
Right, exactly. And I guess what I tried to do in the poem was to see if I couldn't find a chant in myself that was like Dylan's, but not. It wasn't necessarily a revision of his song or poem, but it was my own poem, but in a voice that's like his. So
great.
I'll read it and see if you. Please tell me if you feel that it hits the mark, or I mean, because you're a fine musician. So, oh mama, can this really be the end? A clock stopped in its tracks. My time had run its course, but I'm still alive and singing, still searching for the source. My doctor, she don't want to use her ultrasound on me. She says the battery's corroded. My electrodes are on fire. Oh mama, can this really be the end? There's so much consternation in the world everywhere. We still have seeds for planting, but the trowels lie underground. My ragged coat's been torn, the lining's full of holes. Some say this singer's lost his voice, the poet can't go home. Oh, Mama, can this really be the end? My friend Miss Joni Mitchell, she's blacked out on the floor. I sent her all my music, but she's dangling from the cords. Oh, Mama, can this truly be the end? Forever stuck in Mobile with the Memphis blues again.
That's great. That's great.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot, obviously, going on within that.
Yes.
Within that poem. Yeah. How long ago did you write that?
Well, I wrote it about 4 or 5 months ago, and I've been kind of working on it since. Yeah.
So, talk to me about your creative process in terms of how you like to work. You wrote that, or you came to that after a period of thought. How does that work for you?
Well, it's usually through kind of reflection about an ordinary life experience. It could be anything like the blood red moon that we've all experienced recently with the eclipse of the moon. It could be about the guards at the Cantor Art Museum or something like that. I had an encounter with one of the guards in a very friendly encounter about a painting. And that could become the generative spark for one of these poems. But it's usually some kind of an encounter or an everyday experience, or could be an image or a dream or anything.
Do discussions with your patients, while confidential, have an influence with you when you're thinking about these issues?
Yes, although unlike some of my colleagues who are really fine authors and use their clinical experience as a springboard for writing, I try not to transcribe my clinical experiences into the poetic. I really try to keep them separate, both for the sake of honoring the integrity and privacy, and you might even say the sanctity of that relationship, and not use it as a kind of narrative voice.
Right, right. So how, you were talking about the cantor.
Yes.
So, and we've talked about Dylan a little bit, which is the musical aspect, but obviously visual art has a profound impact in the way many of us think. Can you talk about it as it relates to you?
Well, I can just share a personal experience.
Please.
When two aspects of it. When I was in my last year of college, I had the opportunity to study on my own with a tutor. And I chose the topic of artistic vision in the creative process, because I was very interested in creativity itself. And I found myself at a certain point in the year becoming very interested in Picasso's work on Guernica. And I studied very carefully the very original sketches that he made, all the way through to the final marvelous painting that he did. And it brings me in a way to my friendship with Michae Killen, because Michael's work, as you know, is on such a magisterial scale and has such a kind of social import to it.
Correct.
Like the Picasso work of Guernica. But I found that it was the earliest sketches that you could see in the final work. Even though he had gone through a tremendous evolution, those earliest forms were still present in the final kind of thing.
Right.
And I think that would be a wonderful thing to study about Dylan, to look at his earliest music and to see what themes continue out through the whole corpus. But the visual thing is very important, not only from my study, but during the time that I was there at Dartmouth, Hans Hofmann, the famous expressionist painter, paid a visit. And I was extremely moved by that lecture and discussion of abstract expressionism. And there is now one of Hans Hofmann's paintings in the Anderson collection at Stanford.
Yeah, right.
So,
So you're a man of words. So I want to ask you about 4 words, and I'd like to know, because I know you're contemplative, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do. When I say the words, send in the clowns, what does that mean to you?
well, on one hand, it means a kind of merriment that I can remember feeling when I would go to Barnum and Bailey Circus back east, when they would come to town. And, you're exposed to all these terrifying acts, the trapeze, the lion tamers, whatever. And at a certain point, all of a sudden the clowns would come in and there'd be a sense of merriment. But as I thought about this over and over as time went on, there's a kind of pathos that those clowns bring. They're trying to sweep light under the carpet, and they can't do it. It keeps the floodlight keeps moving around. There's a frustration, a discouragement, and I get a kind of a sorrowful feeling about it, some kind of pathos about it.
Right, yeah.
So Send in the Clowns has this kind of dual aspect.
Yes.
When I hear it.
I always thought it was interesting in your business to know that I think there are 20 or 30% of the population are kind of phobic about clowns.
Really?
Yeah. I've read that they really kind of can be a little terrifying.
Well, there's
to
a
people.
weirdness about the clowns too.
And how you take it as a child, and how that kind of expands into almost something that's kind of terrifying, and as you used the word before, foreboding.
Foreboding, right.
Really, that has that aspect of it. So yes.
And the costumes and the face paint gives a kind of garish quality.
Yes, yes.
But people nowadays seem more, a lot of young people go for the garish and the terrifying.
They do.
We live in a very terrifying time.
Yes, we do. And I'm really looking forward to a time that perhaps we can have more time to be together and to continue this conversation. It has been an absolute treat to be able to speak with you and to hear your words, and it's just terrific. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. That's terrific.
Bye.
Thanks. Good to
Very
be with
good.
you.
Thank you.
Michael.
Just have a seat. We
Thanks.
have a couple of minutes left, and I just want to say, I was amazed as I watched how you drew out Randy and kept moving the subject and topic along. And I loved how you got him to read his poem and how you generally interacted with him just beautifully.
Well, thank you very much. I learned from the best. So that's what I have to say about that. But I have something interesting for you, which you already know, but our viewers perhaps don't know about this fantastic event that's going to be coming up at St. Bede's in Menlo Park on Sand Hill Road on November 22nd, which is terrific. And to get it absolutely straight, I'm of an age, I've got to put these on. The program is called Michae Killen Art and Music, Engaging Climate Change. And it's featuring your art, and we just talked about the music of Bob Dylan and Stephen Sondheim. This is a very, very exciting prospect. I know that St. Bede's has a wonderful bunch of programs, but this is really an interesting one.
Yes, I'm going to display for the first time my entire Dire Consequences Send in the Clowns series of paintings. Just 4 paintings taking up 49 feet. And I will be sharing some imagery that I've developed of some things that are going to happen to the future that we need to think about. And I plan to end my speech encouraging everybody to try to get the spirit and think and act like Don Quixote acted when he felt the need to go out and attack the giants.
Exactly, exactly. And so that again is on Sunday, November 22nd at St. Bede's.
That is correct. And St. Bede's believes that this may bring in a 200-person audience. And I just think it's wonderful as I show some of the art and share the ideas that led me to make this big series of paintings, some of which have already been displayed by the United States Department of Commerce, USGS, Stanford, but this will be the first time the entire collection is shown. And I just love the idea at some point I'll get a signal or I'll be given a signal and all of a sudden the singers and the musicians will go, I'm up here and you're down here, send in the clowns. And at some point, probably when I get to my painting, which is titled Knock, Knock, Knocking on Heaven's Door, I'm following in Randy Weingarten footsteps, where he interpreted one of Dylan's songs into a poem. I've taken one of Dylan's songs and I've interpreted into a 4x6 painting.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, you know, you opened the show talking about Don Quixote today.
Yes.
Tell me what thoughts you're having with regard to Don Quixote today before we have to.
Well, I think the mood in the United States and other parts of the world is that there are things that are broken, seriously broken, and there are forces that are developing and coming at us that, for example, threaten the sustainability of America and sustainability of the rest of the world. And I just felt it's time to look at a few of those threats, and I felt something extraordinary is needed. Don Quixote had the courage, the imagination to go out and fight the greatest challenges of the world, and we have to wake up and do the same. Or, I heard you use the word, send in the clowns. A situation might develop where we increasingly say, send in the clowns.
That's
and
right.
I know I'm not going to say what that phrase means to me, but when we have to say that, it's not going to be
We're in trouble. And on that note, my friend, we're going to save it for another day, and we're going to come back to it, I'm sure. Until we meet again, I'm Jonathan Clyde. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Michael.
It was really very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
Like a pro. So we sit here for a minute.
Yep.